G'day everybody and welcome back to the Risky Rollers podcast. I'm Dalton and I'm joined as always by Locky.
Hello everybody.
And this week we're going to be discussing a few interesting bits and pieces, mainly to do with the ANZTC, the Australian New Zealand Team Championship, which we both attended as part of Team Victoria last weekend.
Fuck yeah, we did.
So that was awesome. So we'll be going through a bunch of stuff with that and just chatting about everything to do with that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Before we get on to that, massive thanks to Dice Arcade. Tim from Dice Arcade is an absolute legend. He'll sort you out for any miniature or wargaming or hobby stuff you need. You'll hear more from him later in the episode. Another Tim, Waggers from Miniature Scenery, brand new sponsor of the channel. Absolute legend. He does some phenomenal MDF terrain. If you want to get your boards looking fantastic, go and check him out. Links down below. Great guy. Make sure to jump into our Discord where you can chat with us about all sorts of things, a bunch of stuff about ANZTC, as well as just general hobby stuff. It's all going off in there. There's fantasy, there's Age of Sigmar, there's obviously loads of 40k, all sorts of stuff going on. Fantastic
30K.
Place. 30k as well. Just everything down there. As well as if you want to support us, you can become a patron. Our Patreon is down below. You can become a patron when you get access to early bat reps, extra podcasts, and entirely exclusive bat reps. The first one is already up there available for you. It's a Tau and Black Templar episode, which will pair very nicely with next week's bat rep on YouTube, which is more or less the same Tau list with all of the nerfs applied into Deathwatch with all of the new Armour of Contempt shenanigans. Mm-hmm. So you can sort of see the before and after of those. Exclusive for patrons, up now on Patreon. So, without any further ado... Well, actually, first thing I need to ask. Locky, what have you been working on?
Literally nothing.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Because ATC is, and was, quite time-consuming and energy.
It's quite all-encompassing.
And it was... Yeah, it was it was a good lead-up. I was playing lots and lots of games leading up to the event.
Yep.
And then literally...
Which is something we'll talk a bunch about and actually want to bring up. Remind me to bring something up specifically when we get to that, before we get too far into it.
Okay.
Because, it's important.
And then
also...
and then post it, basically. I've been sort of just taking a break from everything until we can get back into it. It's such a intense, I guess, spread of time, or it's doubled down so much with 40k at that standard that you just need a bit of a break from it coming back anyway. So won't be doing much until Sunday, which is our club day.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Which is tomorrow, I guess, if everyone listening.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I'm in a very similar note. I haven't painted anything. I haven't built any miniatures. I found 2 random Dread Knights that I didn't know I had, brand new, sitting around.
That's always good.
So that's cool. And a box of Witch Elves. So that's always nice.
Cool.
That was cool. And then today, while I was out and about, I was doing my thing off at work, and I ended up down at the Shell Coles Express service station down in Langwarrin, just off the M11. So if you're down in Melbourne, you know where that is. If not, highway just off at Servo. And up at the counter, randomly, was a display thing of White Dwarf at this servo that they're selling.
So they had a White Dwarf at a servo?
They had three of them, like for sale, $17 a pop, sitting at the servo. Why?
Why not? They sell magazines at servos, right?
Yeah, but White Dwarf is such a specific magazine. Like, it's hard to find outside of Warhammer-specific hobby stores, and then maybe other hobby stores. Very rarely a newsagent.
Really?
Why a servo?
Dude, nearly every single newsagent I've ever gone to will have a White Dwarf in it.
Really?
Yeah.
I found it so hard to find it.
Maybe in the city. I don't know. I've always found it really common in newsagents. I'll give you, petrol station is weird and obscure, but newsagents I've always seemed to find, like, there'll only be one. Like, there won't be, like, multiple copies or anything. It'll be, like, one.
There were 3 copies there.
That's weird.
It was a whole display case. Like,
I don't know. Maybe 40 is big in Langwarrin.
I guess so.
Or
If you're-
Warhammer in general, I guess. It's just big and
Yeah, yeah. Well, look, I mean, I'm going to be going back to every month to see if they have the new one. So
yeah.
didn't buy them. I just want to know. Like, so that was weird. But that's pretty much it as far as hobby I've been doing. Is just seeing White Dwarf in strange places.
I mean, I do have a Moirax on the table. It's like half painted.
That's pretty cool.
Painted, so,
Hey, look, there you go.
prepping for the book, which I have
Yes.
now. Just, yeah.
Cool. Very nice. And you guys will be seeing that on the channel very soon.
Yes.
I think in
Couple weeks.
2 weeks' time?
Couple weeks.
3 weeks'
Yeah.
time. Yep. That's going to be pretty cool. I'm keen to see how that book comes out and how all that shakes out.
Yeah, it's gonna be tasty. Hopefully.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Now, let us crack right on then. We've got ANZTC. As we mentioned in last week's podcast, we were attending the Australian New Zealand Team Championship as part of Team Victoria. And we couldn't talk a lot about it last week because we were sort of not going into too much about the teams and stuff, but we can now. It's happened. It's gone. We can talk shop. It was good.
It was.
Yeah. So we've got a great story about how we got up there, which was thoroughly entertaining. The whole trip up.
Yeah.
And then the weekend itself was fantastic, and so on. Now there is an elephant in the room which we'll have to get out of the way early. And we just wanted to mention it and sort of acknowledge it and then just move past. There was an infraction against tournament rules that occurred at the tournament in round 4, or that was discovered in round 4. One of the players had some extra units on the table that shouldn't have been there, giving them a significant advantage in their games.
Not from
up
Vic,
until the point.
a difference.
Not from Team Vic, but that's as far as we'll go with narrowing that down at all. That gave them significant advantage. That severely impacted the teams that played them on day 1, and then the way that the penalty was applied from the tournament organisers then doubly affected those teams from day 1 as well by giving a bonus to the teams they played on day 2.
Yes.
But not the teams they played on day 1. So that did occur. There's certainly an amount of feeling that it was handled suboptimally.
By the TOs.
By the TOs. However, what's done is done. It happened. And as far as I'm concerned, that's more or less been sorted.
It's not what's important.
And I suppose
it's not what's important.
It's not what's important.
The event,
and
about today's podcast and stuff. It's just that
exactly.
It's something that happened. It sucked that it happened, and sometimes things are out of your control and you can't do anything about it, and you just got to wear it.
Yep, exactly. And I suppose it's worth mentioning here as well that any sort of infraction to that degree, whether intentional cheating or not, at any of our events will not be tolerated, et cetera, where all the usual stuff about being opposed to that kind of behaviour.
Yep.
Let's crack on.
Yes.
So we went up to ANZTC, I guess, which was up in Medowie, which is precisely in the middle of buttfuck nowhere.
Let's not talk about where it is because I've heard enough about where it is and the lack of the poor
we are all
location.
thoroughly over where this was.
Yeah.
And to start us off, so was flying up was myself and you, as well as Boyd from Legends and Lore, and Dean Sinbeck from Blog for the Blood God. We were all flying up together on Friday night. And to start us off, while I'm off at the terminal getting our boarding passes and bag tags and all that kind of stuff, you're busy taking Dean on a tour of a different terminal, from memory.
No. I just walked over the different bridge. That's all. Wasn't a big deal.
So you're busy checking out Terminal 2, and we're supposed to be in Terminal 1. How was it?
I mean, it's the same. Actually, it was way better. The Qantas terminal
actually probably
sucked.
yeah. Oh yeah, Terminal 1's awful.
Yeah. The Virgin one is so much nicer.
Yeah. So is the Jetstar. Actually, I think Terminal 4 is probably the best one in the whole airport.
Yeah.
The Jetstar one. It's great.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was lovely. So we went through and did all that. And then we're on the plane, having a grand old time, the four of us chatting.
Hold on. Flight gets delayed an hour and a half.
Okay, sorry, yes. Our flight was delayed an hour and a half. So was the other. So there were 2 groups in the team going up. One of them was leaving on an earlier flight, and we were leaving on a slightly later one. the earlier flight got delayed before ours, obviously, because it was earlier. Quite significantly. They were like 2.5, 3 hours delay. To the point where we were joking around that we might end up boarding and leaving before they do.
Yeah.
Might actually end up in Newcastle before they did. They ended up boarding about half an hour before us. We boarded our flight an hour and a half after our scheduled time. And off we go,
So,
off to Newcastle.
to give context, our flight was scheduled to departure at 7:10, right? So we get delayed an hour and a half. Then we sit in taxi for about 25 minutes waiting to be refueled.
Right, so we sat on the tarmac after boarding for a while. Something about refueling. Cool. Good stuff. And then we're off to Newcastle, right?
Yep, so we don't take off till about 9 o'clock.
Yep, cool. And then Newcastle.
Yes, and then Newcastle.
Cool. And then the flight went well, and then we're coming into Newcastle, and it all went well, right?
Well, landing gear's down. We're about
Landing gear's down. We're
50
approaching...
50 metres off the tarmac, and then the plane
Yep.
just keeps going. Pitches back.
It doesn't land.
Pitches back up. And just
Why? But why?
takes
Why
back
would it
up.
not land? It's
I
there.
don't know. Apparently, the airport was closed, or they just closed the airport, and they weren't allowed to
Just-
land. Okay.
I mean, it was a bit misty outside.
Yeah. Fog, apparently. Ooh.
Apparently, it was the sea fog had rolled in
Yes.
that no one saw coming,
Yes.
and didn't bother to tell anyone half an hour early into the flight.
Yeah. Or even like halfway through the flight, or even at takeoff, no one was like, meh. So I worked it out, right? Realistically,
Yeah.
the reason
Yeah.
why, and they would have known. Qantas would have known 100%. They would have known. They would have gone, we don't care. What's easier for them is to go, we will just supply an alternate solution at the other end, rather than cancelling the flight and then losing everyone's money.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's what planned out. They 100% knew that
Yeah.
their flight was probably not going to be able to land there, and then they just sorted it out. So we get a message as we've taken back off or pitched back up or whatever you want to call it on the... Well, actually, Boyd just said to me, because I didn't actually hear it because we were chatting too much. Boyd just passed me that,
we were talking, trying to figure out what was going
He's
on.
like, "Oi, we're going back to Melbourne." I'm like, fuck off, you are. I thought he was taking the piss, right? Because I didn't hear any of what he said thing. I was like, nah, whatever, man. He's like, no, legit.
We all just laughed and chuckled and we're like, yeah, no, of course we
Yeah.
are. And then just kept talking like, what's going on? What's going
He's
to happen?
like, no, seriously. And you know that time when you look at someone, you're like, nah, who's going to break first? Am I going to break or are you going to break? And he's like, no, legit. And then I kind of look around and I see people's faces. I'm like, oh, actually, maybe they did say that.
Yeah.
And then I asked people behind us, I'm like, did they just, oh, sorry, in front of us. I was like, did they just say we're go back to Melbourne? They're like, yeah. I was like, what the fuck? And I was like, no.
Also, the people in front of us.
Boyd's told them.
Yeah,
I was like, I need to ask the stewards.
So the people in front of us, by the way, we'd talked to earlier in the flight, because we were talking all about 40k and the hobby and that kind of stuff between us. And it became apparent at some point the people in front of us were placing bets on like
And behind us.
what we were and behind us on what we were talking about.
Yeah.
They had it narrowed down to something gaming related.
That was it. They're like, yeah, we don't get it.
But so we were already on like speaking terms with both these rows of people, who were like two separate groups as well. So we're like, all right, Boyd's obviously like said quietly to them, let's get these guys. Yeah. And then I think one of the hostesses come down and we're like,
is this legit? Like, we go back to Melbourne? And she's like,
and
yes.
she's like, yep.
And like just straight face, not even like sorry, just like yep. And we're like,
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, look, it's obviously not their fault that anything's happened, so there's no point.
Yeah.
Getting up with them.
So at that point, we're in like damage control, right? Because we're like, shit.
Yeah.
What?
We're in the air with no communications. We can't tell anyone that we're still in the air.
So we essentially like
The other boys have landed and they're waiting for us, or think we're coming.
Yeah. And at this point, we're kind of like, well, Vic's forfeits. Like, more or less, we were like, we probably not going to be able to get to our first game at 8 a.m.
8:30
or 8:30 on the Saturday in time. Like, we're just not. So we're like, contingencies.
How can we get from Melbourne to
Newcastle?
Yeah,
as quick as
possible. To Medowie, which is another 45 minutes north of Newcastle. Because we're like, we'll be back in Melbourne by like, what was it, by 12?
Yeah.
So we'll be back out by like 12:31. There's not going to be another flight. Is there going to be a 5 a.m. flight that'll get us there early in time? If so, can we get on that? At one point we were looking at, can we drive? Like, is that viable? And we decided that if we risk several decent-sized speeding tickets, then it was. But it was not an ideal solution. We'd all had a couple of beers by this stage. And so then we're talking about this, and we're trying to figure out the best way to get there. And then they make another announcement and say, well, look, we're being rerouted to Sydney instead.
And we're like...
It's probably, what, half an hour back into the air after leaving?
Yeah. So probably an extra added 45 minutes in total with the routing around where they were trying to figure out what was going to happen and then actually getting to Sydney and then landing.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay.
So we end up...
What's the situation that's going to happen there? And then they're like, oh, we're going to give you coaches.
Well, no, they didn't. They weren't. They didn't say anything like that for a while. We had like 10 minutes where we're like, well, we're just going to be in Sydney. Like, I hope there's a high.
Oh, yeah, sorry, that's right, yeah.
And we were talking about that, and one of the guys next to us was, I think, a local or something. He was like, well, there's a train that runs up, and there's certain buses, and you might be able to find somewhere here. They're like, taxis aren't going to take you for a run that big. Your hire car places aren't going to let you leave a car in Newcastle. And so, like, we're considering the train, we're considering 5 a.m. flights. We're like, well, nowhere's going to fly Sydney to Newcastle.
Yeah.
It's like an hour and a half drive. And so, we're looking into all of that. And then they're like, we're going to provide coaches. And we're like, well, if they're as much of a shit show as the flight is, do we want to rely on those?
Initially, I was like, coaches. That's all right. I was like, that's fine. Coaches are pretty... They're big, they're nice, they're comfy. It'll be, like a 45-minute drive. We'll just be chilled. Maybe we'll be able to get a little bit of sleep, whatever. It'll be fine. That's what I thought, being naive and stupid. Yep. Anyway, we get out, and then as we leave the terminal, the staff are like, just head this way.
Head down to the coach.
Your shuttle buses will be there. And I was like, excuse me? Our what? And they're like, shuttle buses. And you're like, that's not a coach.
Well, the best thing about this was we get to the coach bay, and there is a coach there.
And we're like, that was
the driver's great. And we're like, that's great. They obviously got one on standby because they knew, an hour ago that the flight was coming, or however long it was. They got a guy on standby. The driver's standing there chatting. We show up, and a bunch of people from the plane are all coming out, and we show up. Lovely big coach. And we're like, sweet. We'll fit half the plane on this thing. There'll be another one coming around the corner. Too easy. And then the guy's like, I'm just here. I'm not the coach for you guys. Like, all right. And then a rickety little, like a 20-seater?
Yeah, a shuttle bus. Literally a shuttle bus.
Like a 20-seater shuttle bus with a bag trailer.
Yeah. Pulls around the corner.
Comes around the corner.
Yeah, like,
and we're like, what? I mean, the dude was lovely. The driver was lovely. And he's like, look, obviously can't fit you all on here. Get like 20 on. And we're like, look, we've got to make sure we get there by like however long early it is.
We're like, we're on this bus. Get on the bus.
We're on this bus. We piled into the bus. Ended up right in the back seat, which was nice. All four of us back there. I've got some lovely pictures of you and Boyd napping.
It's the worst bus trip in the world.
Like we spent the whole thing doing 85 and 110.
Oh my god! And it was just so uncomfortable and rickety, and the roads sucked. New South Wales roads suck.
The reason we were doing 85, I presume, was to stop the bus shaking itself apart.
Yeah, it was fucked.
Which I was not confident it wouldn't do anyway.
That's so cool. So to give you context, the reason why I mentioned the time at the beginning, right? So we left Melbourne. We were supposed to leave Melbourne at 7:10. Theoretically, we would have been in the accommodation by like 9:30 at the latest. So
7:10, we would have been landing in Newcastle at like 8:30. So out of the plane by like 9. From Newcastle Airport, it's like a 10-minute drive. It's 10 minutes in a taxi. So we'd be there, 9:30. We'd be there. We'd be having dinner. We'd be shooting the shit. We'd be doing pairings.
Prepping for our games, all that crap.
Exactly. Nice early night, like 11 o'clock. Up at 7, ready for the next day. Good to go.
So we don't get to the accommodation until 2 a.m.
We don't get to Newcastle until 2 a.m. And then we get to the airport.
Oh, yeah, it was like 2
Now Yeah. We did, however, we had pre-booked a taxi. I think you'd pre-booked a taxi. You'd rung Maitland and Raymond Terrace. This is important for later on. You'd rung Maitland and Raymond Terrace taxis and gotten them to come and pick us up from the airport at 2:30 in the morning. Or 2:40 in the morning, sorry. Which is when we'd arrived.
Yeah, I was like 1:32 or whatever, yeah.
It was 2:37 when the coach pulled in.
Sure, it wasn't 1:37.
Because we were talking about it being 3:30 by the time we got there, and it wasn't. It was 2:30.
Oh, okay, right, yeah. Anyway, the point being is that we organised a cab, and then so we got to the accommodation at like 2:30 or whatever it was.
3 a.m.
No, it wasn't that late. 100% was not that late. No, it was way early because I remember we pulled in and we were like, oh, it's actually a lot earlier than what we thought. Like I think we got to Newcastle Airport at 2.
We got to the accommodation at 2.
Yeah,
yes, that's correct. Yeah.
It's definitely not 3 because I was like sick. Anyway, and then so that was the start of the whole thing. Basically, having to fucking deal with the world's shittest level of logistics before
it was.
So
it was impressive how poorly handled the whole thing was.
We literally went into round 1 like blind.
Yeah. So we got like 4 hours sleep, and we're up in the morning, off to the event. To be fair, we got who did we get? We got taxis from 13 cabs that morning.
Yeah, 1 through cabs.
And you know what? They actually showed up. Fair play.
Yeah.
They showed up, which you would expect from a taxi company, because we'd booked them, and we went off to the event. We went into the event, and so the event hall, I'll describe roughly what it is. It was a lovely, big, modern bowling club hall. It was the only building in the entire town built in the last 50 years. And it was a lovely place. You've got a big main dining area, which we walk in and we notice full of set tables for dining at. And then off to one side, you've got like an end room, which had like 3 sets of tables in it. And then off on the opposite end of the bowling club is another room with 8 tables in it, where one team could play another team. And then there was also a little side room off down a hallway that had 2 tables in it that were part of one of the sets of tables. If that sounds confusing, it was. Yeah. But anyway, so we go in there, we're more or less on time. We get into round 1. Who are we playing round 1? South Australia. So this is good fun. We played South Australia round 1. You played Tyranids into
GK.
Grey Knights. Very nice. So tell us all about how this game went.
So this was interesting for me because I'd done a lot of practice with GK leading up to, and I guess in the description I'll put the list that I ran for people who don't want to have to go through the whole rigmarole and whatever of finding it. We'll just put the list in the description for this.
Well, given that finding it involves paying for BCP and finding a past event, yeah.
Oh, really? Do you have to pay for it to find a past event?
To see past events,
oh my
yeah.
God,
so lists will be down in the description below.
Yeah. So it's basically warrior spam Tyranids. So contrary to what everyone else was running at the event, all the other teams, we ran Nids as a sword. As a shield.
As a shield, yep.
So the purpose of this was basically to fire blanket and mitigate a lot of other teams' big heavy hitters, or be a somewhat deterrent for that reason, right? To scare other players, scare other teams to be like, I don't want to pair into that. To open up our team for more favourable pairings on our side, right? And I think
so lists in a team
perfectly like that.
Lists in a team event tend to follow 2 archetypes, either a sword or a shield. A sword is a list that is designed to swing big. It's supposed to kill a bunch of stuff, score a load of points, and win a game by a huge margin, or just lose horrifically. It doesn't play the scrappy, take a pounding game. Whereas a shield list is designed to essentially mitigate your opponent scoring points while scoring a solid number yourself. It's very, very hard to score big in a game with a shield list, but it's also designed to stop your opponent scoring big. And in a teams event, this matters because you've got a little bit of control over pairings and to what armies you actually play and what lists you actually play. So as Locky's saying, the idea of this shield list is that we want to find our opposing team's biggest hitters, the ones that they're going to score 20 points, like team points on, put them onto one of our shield lists. They can sit there and go, actually, you're only going to score 12. Or actually, you're only going to score 13.
Yeah.
And just sort of bring their whole total points down. And I do want to say, this is what I wanted to say earlier. This is something that's really different to your usual play style, which is to go for those big swings.
Yeah.
Like, you're a sword player. You you build your lists to do that,
Yep.
where you run in, you hit big, you score big points, you play a big, aggressive game.
100%.
This list is anti all of that. And you played it exceptionally.
Yeah.
You did a whole bunch of prep work in like the week or two leading up to it. And you played this list absolutely perfectly. It was thoroughly impressive to watch.
Well, thanks, man. No, I think it was interesting to do, but once I understood how it functions and how it played, it was quite easy to maneuver. And like I think it relied on me knowing NIDS. You know, if I didn't know NIDS, it would have been tough to sort of pick up all the little minutiae that I could definitely found in like games 3 and 4, where I was kind of I'd found my confidence in it, and then was able to use a few of the more obscure stratagems and bits and pieces to kind of leverage situations in games. But yeah, man, it was good. It was an absolutely amazing learning experience as well. Like I learned a shit ton from the people that I played, and the standard of game that exists throughout the whole weekend. But yeah, the first game, I'd done a lot of prep into GK prior, and it was bad. Like GK's ability to mitigate a lot of the lists. So the list relies not entirely, but quite significantly on a few psychic powers and a few, not necessarily for points, just for army buffs, like things like Catalyst and Hive Nexus and Onslaught are really key powers that are required, can literally be make or break for turns. And
the list is all about movement and durability, and then like durability through picking what your opponent can and can't target.
Yeah, on top of that as well, it's actually the list gets its strength from like basically a bait and switch tactic.
Yeah.
Where you can essentially bait out targets for your opponent to go, well, I need that dead, and then you can actually counter super hard, like
you almost trick them into overcommitting against
pretty
it.
much, and then they bounce,
and then you punish them for it. Yeah.
So that was
it's a very elegant list.
Yeah, so that was kind of the play, and first game I didn't really understand. I understood it in concept, but I saw it in principle in game 2 massively. So it was kind of game 1, I was just super, super, super cagey. But anyway, his GK list was massive MSU. So it was like 3 purgation squads, it was 4 strike squads, and just Drago and a bunch of other characters, and it was just that I'm going to try and be everywhere and score with MSU and just trade points, right? So, he's going to pop a unit somewhere and it'll die, but it'll score him 3 points, or it'll score whatever. So it was really relying on me to screen properly and trying to mitigate as much as that. But I was kind of really hesitant to go anywhere because, with your strike squads, with hammer hands and stuff like that, they can pick up a unit of warriors quite easily.
Yeah.
Because you can't always put neg 1 damage everywhere onto the warriors. So, but funnily enough, we both played super cagey. And it ended up being this kind of like, I'm going to hold my half, you're going to hold your half. Who's picked better secondaries and who can score them better.
Which is exactly what you want your game to run like.
Yeah, and I kind of forced him to push to the middle. So the first 3 missions of the day were all 5 objective missions, which is absolutely amazing for this list because it pretty much just massively relies on banners and stranglehold. It's just so hard. Like every game, I think every single one of my first 3 games, I scored 15 on nearly all of those. Because if I can get to the middle and leveraging the relationship between Venom Thropes and Warriors, taking advantage of the fights last and the neg 1 to hit and all that sort of stuff and get to that middle, you are not moving me off that middle. Because the moment I have a unit on that middle, if that's full strength, that's going to have every single buff just dumped on it. And that's exactly what played out in turn 5 of that game, funnily enough, where he had to remove me off the middle objective to essentially make it a non-draw for him to get like a 11-9 or a 12-8.
A small win.
I think it would have been a 12-8 swing. And he had his mortal wound Libby. He had just purgations, he had 2 units of strikes, there was like everything in there, and it was charge, shoot, psychic, and he couldn't take me off.
Yep.
Couldn't take me off, and then ended up being a 10-10 draw. So it was really good. My opponent was awesome.
Well, it was fantastic. It was fantastic as an example of what a shield list does as well, because if he'd gone into, for argument's sake, our Tau or
the Eldar.
Or the Eldar, he would have just,
even the Mirror.
The Emperor's Children.
The Mirror would have fucked him too.
Or the Mirror, the Grey Knights. He'd just walk through them. Boyd's list is great, but like not in the Mirror, as we found out.
Yeah. So it was great. I mean, look, to be honest, caveat with all my games, I had 5 amazing opponents. Like, I did not... Yep. Going into it, there was this kind of, I guess, preparatory mindset, or like this anticipation that because you're playing at this standard, it kind of changed the etiquette of the game. And like in some games, it definitely does. I could definitely see that at tables, not necessarily in our team, but in other teams, like a lot more tension and stuff. But my 5 games, man, was so relaxed, was so still like playing at a competitive level, like at a singles, but no different. Every single one of my opponents was amazing. I even had the Adam Davies, the captain of Tassie, tell me that the game against him, which was his Custodians, was the best game he'd had all weekend, and that was awesome. Like hearing that going, that game for me was as well. It was cutthroat, it was tight, it was clean, but it was really balanced. And you know, there were moments where I was like, oh mate, like I meant to do this. Is that okay? And that's man, that's totally fine. Like all that sort of stuff. None of this. Oh, nah, you said that, bro. Nah. Like, fuck that shit off. Like, none of that business. And that's what I've got to... And I'll say it now for all the people that I played throughout the day, if they're listening, thank you, guys, because it made my initial and first time, inaugural, high-level competitive 40K experience absolutely amazing. So I've got to take my hat off to all of them, because that was really great.
Yeah. So before we move on to round 2 and onwards, we'll hear a quick word from Tim at Dice Arcade, and then we'll be right back.
dicearcade.com.au. All the biggest brands of miniatures and wargaming. Free postage over $250.
All right, thanks for that one, Tim. So that went really well. Our team ended up in a draw with SA, 80 points to 80 points. And then we went on into round 2, which was...
WA.
Into Western Australia.
So
that was pretty good.
This one was cool. This one was an interesting test, because there's, WA are quite, have a big reputation for being really, really good, and have been for quite a while. I think it's Queensland and WA that sort of have the reputation of being sort of the top 2 contenders in Australia. Not only for their like local scenes in their states, but also at obviously these kinds of events. So it was cool. Like I was really excited, and I got over those initial nerves of the first game, or the first round, and kind of wasn't going into it cocky, but was going into it with a bit more confidence in knowing what I needed to do, but really at the same time apprehensive of trying not to be sort of dwarfed by, their experience and them as a team and all those kinds of things. It was, focus on the key things and whatever. And I think we did well with the pairings. I mean, you'll know more on the pairing side than I did, because I didn't have... I mean, it was great to watch, but I had no idea what was going on. At
some point, at some point, maybe closer to VTC, we might have an episode on pairings specifically, and how that process works and how you think about it.
Yeah, cool. All right.
But the pairings overall over the whole weekend generally went pretty well. We've got Jez, who's on our team, is reportedly one of the best in pairings in Australia. And often does pairings for Team Australia at WTC. So pairings in general went fairly well. Against WA, we had a couple of good ones, a couple of iffy ones, and then several sort of just solid down the middle ones.
Yeah. I think mine was an iffy one, right?
Who did you go into for that one?
I went into Dark Harleys.
That's right, yeah. So that was one where we're like, all right, this is going to be a downswing for you.
I fire blanket.
And this is that one. Exactly. This is to make that game a like 15-5 to them instead of a 20-0 to them, because this was a rough one to go into.
Yeah, so it was annoying because all the Harleys I'd played, the first time I played Dark Harleys was when it was released, and it was against Reese, one of the other members of the team, and I got absolutely trashed, and it was horrible. I hated it so much. And then obviously Light got nerfed so hard, so I was like, no, I'm feel confident into Harleys, and the boys asked me, and like, it's dark, and I'm like, ugh. Like,
So Dark Harleys turn off rerolls.
well, no, well, they fight on death, more or less, is pretty much their main shtick.
Right,
They
fight,
just fight on death.
fight on
right?
death, and they have a strat to turn off rerolls.
Yeah.
Yeah?
So it's fine for me because I have no rerolls in the list anyway. I don't like building lists that
Yeah.
don't rely on that because there's so many ways to
Yeah.
counter it these days. So,
Yeah.
I knew exactly what my game plan with this was going to be. It was going to be even like the most cagiest thing ever. And I was like, I ain't going to move barely anywhere. I'm not even going to think about the middle. I'm just going to hold my 2 objectives, and that's all I'm going to do all game because...
Yeah, you're going to score solid points. You're going to let the opponent run around and do their thing.
And I'm going to bait him to come, and I'll shoot. Because if I can shoot him, right, he can't fight me. I can't do anything.
Yeah.
And he had 5 Void Weavers, but they can still punch, but not really into warriors. They struggle. They struggle to
it's an inefficient profile into warriors.
Yeah. So, and funnily enough, it kind of played very similarly to first game in a way where we both played quite cagely. And essentially, my opponent was just, I think it was Jordan who was playing. He was just trading me sort of points for units. He'd train, he'd move a boat into a thing. I'd mortal wound it to death. Like, literally zone throws.
Yeah.
On either flank, it was just something moved, dead. It was like between 8 and 9 mortals, like each unit was just dead every time. And then my warrior's just holding this sort of front. And I basically did this interlocking Death Star, essentially, with 2 units of warriors and 2 units of venom throws of this fights last
and you sort of,
bubble. Just literally just meandered forward right into the middle of the board. And it literally kind of...
Now, the Warriors was a really clever positioning tactic, which was that you would essentially interlace 2 units, sort of, so you'd have a line of Warriors, but they were alternating from which unit they were from.
Yep. And they essentially made a box, right?
Yeah.
They made a box around the 6 units of the 2 units of interlocking venoms. So you'd have one of one and one of the other, one of the and then in a line in the middle. So then the entire unit is getting double units fights last, and we take heroic intervention. So then, because the units are interlocked, warrior to warrior, you're
definitely getting hit by both squads, no matter what you do.
It's fucked. Like, it's literally just you can't touch it. Like, it's just the void.
Yeah.
The problem is that because of coherency and stuff, you have to move. Like, you only get to move about 3 inches because you kind of have to go and move in a certain way. Otherwise, you break it and it falls apart. And that was fine. Like, and again, the other thing, Jordan was an absolutely amazing opponent and was sort of like, no, bro, like, it's like, I get it, like, it's fine, just move it normally. And we were, we were really clear with each other on intent and stuff like that. Again, it was absolutely great. We were so fast. We were smashing through turns of just like, score our secondaries.
This was a quick game. Like,
we were over.
I was. You were
spare.
one of the earliest finished. I think. I think you were the second game to finish from memory in that round.
And it's funny because
so I was. Yeah.
All the other games were like to time, even over.
Yeah.
Most of the last 3 games of the event went over. And it was great. It was a really good trade until the end, the last turn, and it's annoying because it ended being a 10-10 again. Did it? Yes.
It was either a 10-10 or an 11-9. It was very close.
But for him, I think that was my...
For him.
Yeah.
It was but it was very close, and essentially it absorbed a bunch of points that would have otherwise been scored by WA into another list.
Yeah, so it's just frustrating because I actually made one critical error where I needed to remove him off the middle objective rather than, contrary to last game, I had to say on it. And the problem is still that fights last and everything. At that point it was turn 5. Minimal CP, so I couldn't really buff everything. And then I missed the Neurothrope's psychic phase and didn't entirely, just got flustered and forgot it, and as in the models. So I forgot to cast Catalyst, and then I forgot to cast Onslaught for Advance and Charge on a unit, which would have had a whole, the 8 warriors into the middle and taken it up. So, and because of that swing, because I couldn't remove him off it, it ended up dropping to only being at 11-9 instead of being at 11-9 my way. So it was a pretty big swing, which was unfortunate. Thank God that we lost by a little bit more than what that would have been. Otherwise, I would have been pissed.
Yeah, so we ended up losing that round by about 3 points. As in, I think we were 3 points under a draw, which meant we had, I think, 72 or 73 points. Whereas, of course, 75 is a draw.
Yeah. So, so it actually would have mattered, is what you're saying?
Well, I mean, so the thing with teams is you can't sort of go, oh, my game matters. Like, everyone's game mattered. If this person has scored a bit more, if that person has scored a bit more, if this person has been more accurate with their predictions, things like that change how that works. So there were a couple of swings against us in that round. Dean's game in that round he had a unit of 20 Noise Marines doing their thing, and they spent an entire turn, and shooting twice, like 80 shots, and I think killed 3 possessed.
Yeah, he killed like 3 out of a unit of 10, which was
out of a unit of 20.
20, yeah.
Whereas in all of our practice games and all of our simulations and stuff, that unit wipes about 60 possessed a turn.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So he shot like 80 shots into them and killed 3 of them.
Clegg had a horrific...
yeah.
Shot like
so this was the other one. He shot
40 shots into
30
grotesques.
Terminators into Dark Eldar Grotesques
and killed 1.
And didn't kill any. No.
Oh no, he wounded one.
Didn't kill it.
He wounded one.
He wounded it.
Yeah.
He wounded 3 times and got 1 damage through.
Yeah, it was pretty fast.
It was, yeah. So it was unfortunate that went down. But I mean, there are a couple of swings against us where both of those should have been higher point scores for us. But that's what happens. It's a dice game.
Yeah.
But still, we came out of that one. It was still quite a good round. There were some incredible games happening in that round as well. And so we came out of that one, a little bit down, but feeling good because I got to watch some incredible games. You played a great game. And then we went off into round 3, which was against the New South Wales Mercs, the New South Wales Mercenaries.
Yeah.
So just a quick bit of background for why they're Mercs. Because New Zealand obviously has all their COVID stuff going on, they can't come over. So we were a team short for the event. And whichever state hosts the event usually fields a team of mercenaries. They're essentially the Gumby team. They make up numbers. But they are also then a team which is competing.
And they've also got some pretty good players, this team. Like from
They definitely did, yeah. So the New South Wales Mercs team, we played them in round 3. And you went into...
Harleys again.
Harleys?
Yeah.
Was this Brody?
This was Brody, yeah.
This is Brody. Jez Brody, yeah?
Josh Brody?
Or Josh?
Josh Brody.
Josh Brody. I think so. Jez Brody was on the main New South Wales team,
yes.
and
I think that.
I think Josh was on the Mercs.
Sorry, guys, if we got your names wrong, but yeah, a lot of names that weekend.
I've met you like twice now, so
it's my first time.
That's true.
Yeah. So, but this, and when we spoke about in pairings, the boys asked me, they're like, "Oh, are you happy to go into Harleys again?" I go, "What's the Harleys?" They're like, "Lie with." I'm like, "Yes, it's fine."
Yep.
I'm like,
"Yep,
yeah." 100%.
I just want to say as well, this exact player with this list played into Dean at the Maitland Team Championships a couple of weeks ago. Went in expecting like a 12 or something and got zeroed.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things where the reputation is still a bit there for Harleys, but they're not necessarily. There's definitely play into them.
Yeah.
And you showed this really well with this game.
Yeah. So I think they knew, or definitely my opponent Brody was definitely like, he's not going to win. Like, not even get it. I don't even think he expected to draw or even really tried. It was more of a fire blanketed me in this one.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Part of this was just the reputation of Tyranids, which definitely helped a lot. People are expecting Tyranids to come out and do mass mortal wounds and have big angry bugs. So there definitely a lot of teams were trying to fire blanket your list, assuming that it would be a massive damage swing.
Yeah.
But also as well, having seen your performance in the previous couple of rounds, they knew that your list was something to keep an eye out on.
Yeah, definitely. And then so then it was kind of a little bit of a different game plan. We actually, as a team, went into this one a little bit more gung ho, because it was kind of the fact that we drew and then lost. It was we had to win to kind of have a
shot
at anything. So I remember speaking to Jez and Dean in passing, and then as we were kind of getting ready for it, they're like, "Mate, just go for it. Like, just don't try and play cage. Just like everyone is just like, just go. Try and kill, get as much points. Yeah, let's smash it and do it." And that's what I did, and that's smashed that and got a 15-5 on that one. So that was a
So I was running doing a bunch of different things during this round, so I didn't have as much time to watch your game in particular. Yeah. But it looked like you guys were having a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. Yeah. You did some really cool, interesting plays turn 5 to scrabble a few more points, which actually was really, really clever on Brody's side. It was just based on the secondaries that he chose and stuff. The Hully one where you get 3 points if you take an objective back off that you weren't on or whatever, which was subsequently also the sub-primary on that mission.
Yep.
Which was really nice because he moved off his, because he was second player, he moved off his home field objective. And I was like, "Do you just move off your home field objective?" He's like, yeah. And then based on those secondaries, I can't stop him from doing it. And he was able to, obviously because he scores his primary and that at the end of turn 5. He just started turn 5 and just moved back onto it and ding gets basically like 7 points, which was really cool. And then also I got excited again and missed a whole sucking phase. Sorry, you missed the whole movement phase.
you got a habit of doing this one.
Nah, this one was bad because I had a plan in my head. So the problem that is with this list as well is there's a lot of psychic buffs that happen in command phase. And then as well with like choosing imperatives that are psychic related and stuff. And there's a few times where I was like, all right, now I'm going to cast psychic powers because it's like psychic. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm not doing that. I've got to move first. So
you spend your whole command phase lining up these psychic phase buffs and abilities.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of forget that there's a whole other phase in between.
100%.
Because you do all this stuff and you're like, cool, I'm ready to go. And then you just start.
Yeah, it was annoying, actually. In this regard, it was very annoying because I needed to basically... I would have been able to move in advance with a rerollable advance. I needed to roll a 5 to get onto within charge range of and take the objective because he wasn't on the objective, and the objective was right on the center of full LOS blocking ruin. So I would have been able to move onto the objective in a way to see around it. And then also I'd be touching the objective, so I would have scored, it would have been harder. He would have had to come to me in his turn 5, even if I didn't make the charge. And then I would have been able to charge to one of the units that was just outside of the objective on the other side, like just needing a 7-inch charge or whatever, and it would have just been primo, because then I would have literally had every objective on the table, and he would have been tabled at that point. I think barring one or two things. But yeah, Lass couldn't do it because I forgot to move. But yeah, so really all that would have done was would have made it a 16-4. Like it wouldn't have turned it to a 20 or anything like that. And at that point, we'd already won that round by such a significant margin, so it didn't really matter. It was just a little bit of my player pride lost, I guess, at that point. But no, still, great game, great player. It was just every single game was just amazing.
Yep. And that pretty much wrapped up day 1. We had some dinner there and then went off back to our accommodation. Did we have much trouble with getting back that night?
Yes, we have trouble travelling anywhere in that place, bro, because
people
don't want to make money there, which I just don't understand.
I think we had to call like 3 different cab companies to get someone to send 2 cabs to pick us up. Yep. And we ended up calling the same one that we did the day before, the Maitland and Raymond Terrace. Yeah. Not the Maitland taxi company, the Maitland and Raymond Terrace taxi company. It's an important distinction there. And they came and picked us up and took us back home. And the next morning, so we booked that night. We booked with 13 cabs. to have a maxi taxi pick us up in the morning at 7:45 a.m. to make sure we go to the event on time. Like, we'll book it the night before, not a problem at all. Next morning rolls around, we all rock up out the front, 7:45. Where was the taxi, Locky?
No cabs.
No cab. No taxi.
No cabs.
We booked one. He wasn't there.
Yeah.
We called them. They're like, oh, we better assign one. We booked it for 5 minutes ago. So we called them. We called like 2 other taxi companies in the area. We called Maitland and Raymond Terrace, and they were like, well, we can send someone, but they're going to be at least half an hour away. We called, what was it? Oh, so we were on Nelson's Bay Road in Saltash. So we called Saltash cabs, and they're like, oh yeah, we just don't do that area, so no. 13 cabs were like, oh, we'll send someone. And eventually we ended up, we shot a message to, I think, the TOs, and they actually came around and picked us up themselves in their own cars.
Yeah, we called the TO, and then, no, it was South Australia.
Oh, was it? No, it was one of the TOs was there.
Yeah, he was there, but it was all
I think he organised. It was SA.
Yeah, all the SA guys.
They drove around and picked us up and drove us back to the event.
So big shout outs and props to the SA boys for helping us get to day 2 on time.
Yeah,
thanks, boys.
And I'm going to assume that the taxi that 13 cabs assigned did show up half an hour later or something. No, we didn't. I think we left it.
No, it got cancelled.
Did it?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
100%.
Oh, there you go.
So pretty much when we got to the venue, they're like, your cab has been cancelled. And we're like, yeah, we know. Like, we're not even there anymore. Fucking asshole.
Okay, well, there we go. All right. So don't use 13 cabs. It's a bad idea. You're just not going to get there. So, yeah, we went in and we played in round 4. So we had 1 loss, 1 win, and 1 draw from day 1, which put us into the bottom pool for day 2. So the only shot at a podium we had was if we won both games or both rounds, and South Australia lost one of their
other stuff.
Sorry,
and I was just going to say just other stuff happened that was out.
And I think it was South Australia had to lose their round by so we had to win enough, and South Australia had to lose by enough that we jumped up a place, and then New South Wales had to not win by enough that we also jumped them. So a little bit confusing, but essentially we needed to win big and have a couple of other teams lose and not win by enough. So round 1, we went into Tasmania.
Yes.
Which was an interesting one.
So the previous night when we were talking about it and we were going over bits and pieces, there was one list on that I was like, I do not want to play. Yeah. And I was like, it was 2. The T-Suns list, because that just for any of my stuff, and the Custodians. I was like, and because this Custodians list was...
This is not going to work for you.
All the sisters, the sisters character, the Calexis Assassin, it's just an anti-psychic Custodes list. And
could put a -5 to any psychic test, essentially.
And I was like, my list relies so much on these psychic powers. I can't do it. And I was like to the boys, it's a red, I can't do it.
Yeah.
And so I get paid into it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I was like, yeah, fair enough, whatever. Like, I mean, that's the point, right? It's literally the point. Because no one else really, and apparently Davies was playing really well his first 2 games and was like, actually, I think had 2 strong wins. So was piloting the army really well, and kind of no one else really wanted to deal with it. Or like, it would have been a wasted effort on a few other. So I was like, whatever. That's just, again, it's how pairings work. So I was like, okay, cool, whatever. So I had a game plan. I built a game plan up in my head the night before on how I was going to handle it if I did for whatever reason, because I kind of had this gut feeling like it was going to happen. Would deal with it, which was basically sitting all my psychers back and using, kind of potentially throwing warrior units away, but just to blanket it and to create a barrier between the fire line or the battlements, the battle line where the custodians or whoever would be blockading with the warriors, and being able to stay out of range enough and then screen out enough so that he cannot get any of his psychers close enough to my psychers, where I can then use mortals on the stuff that's in the firing line, like in the
Because Tyranids have the very handy ability to essentially like route psychic powers through synapse units.
Yeah.
And you still count as you measure range for the power from the synapse unit that it's routing through, but you measure range for deny to the psychic casting it.
Yeah, which is
very handy.
Super cool.
And this mission was actually played into that quite well, or into your list quite well. This was the 6th objective mission that's a hold 1, hold 2, hold more, not a hold 2 or 3.
Thank God.
So you could very much do this, sort of sitting back a little bit, holding your 2 objectives, and be like, cool, I'm still scoring my 8 points every turn.
Yeah. So it was 6 of missions. The other concern I had moving forward was basically the 6 objective missions are really tough for this list because your secondaries are really you're starved for secondaries with this list. It plays Stranglehold, Banners, and like to the last, and grind them down, or even those extremely well. Like they're just pretty much auto takes, right? They're just so easy, and you're going to score really high. But if one of those is not usable, it becomes really hard to slot it out with something else.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, we'll have to take to the last in this situation, and I've got to play cagey because that's the whole mindset of staying out of range of the psychic null range and all that sort of shit.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Let's take Stranglehold anyway, just on the off chance that maybe he mismoves or I can maybe capitalize on something, whatever. Even if I get it twice, who cares? And then it took Banners again, obviously. So this was really interesting where I played this literally perfect. And
this was an impressive game to watch. I kept coming back just to keep an eye on it and just to see how it was going. And you played it like to perfection.
Because I was expecting this to be like a 5 or a less for me.
I think we had it down as a 7, and you were saying like that's really optimistic.
Yeah, I was like 5, guys, like literally 5. Like everything he has is directly countered to what I can do in ways. Anyway, it ended up being a 10-10, which is nuts. And then I won.
I watched you pick apart his anti-psychic defenses. You made him sort of expose his sisters, and then would just delete them and be like, that's dead.
Yeah.
Plus, and then his assassin poked his head out for a bit, and you just shot everything around it and just left him on his own. You went, all right, cool. Now what? And at one point, you used up his options so much, you ended up drifting a grav tank up the side of the board.
Yeah.
Which was hilarious.
And it's funny because he...
and then you just turned around and went, nope, and deleted the thing.
Yeah, because he charged me with it to try and move block me. And I was like, you sure?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. You can just...
And then
you just remove that
warriors
tank
just
now,
went,
thanks.
Yeah.
When you have 9 warriors coming in with all strength 8,
the buffs on
negative damage.
Yeah.
And then, I think my opponent made a couple errors that definitely played in my favour. Like not using the sisters as kind of like a more forward screen to help mitigate that.
Yep.
It's hard because if you use them more as a forward screen, they just will got shot and killed anyway. So it's a really hard play.
Yep.
And then deep striking dreadnoughts, which was just kind of easy to screen out because I have so much units. I don't think I screened so well. Like no one ever got anywhere near my front line, which was just premium for all my games. And then I ended up having a turn 5 just obliterating swing where I was able to like get advance and charge onto one of the top right objectives, and then literally the next turn swing all the way around, and ended up having 2 of his home objectives and then 2 of the others. So I ended up having 4 and 2 by the end of it. And it was literally a Hail Mary play, which I didn't necessarily, in hindsight, you didn't need to do in terms of the thing. But I was in this point, I just felt right. I'm like, no, I'm doing this. I'm going for this because I wanted the moral win because I could see it. It was insight. And I knew that even if I failed it, the point still would have been like a 8-12 anyway. So I was like, whatever, just go for it and get the 10.
So it was a safe risky play.
Yeah. And I was so happy with that, and everything worked and paid off perfectly, and I was stoked. And like I said, he had he told me that was the best game of up to that point. I mean, his game 5 might have been better, I don't know, but over his first 4 games, it was his favorite, and I loved it because that made me feel really good. and that with the sentiment was reciprocated. Like I felt exactly the same.
Yep. And I also want to say that the Custodes colour scheme he had, which was like a white with red fabric, and then like bits of gold as highlights, inspired me so much that I'm actually like, I want to paint a squad of Custodes like that with marbled white armour.
Well, it's one of the
for
hosts,
Heresy. Right? Probably.
Yeah, it's one.
But I've never seen it in person before, and I saw it and went, that composition is so good.
Are you sure it's not actually Solar Watch because he was playing Solar Watch? I'm pretty sure
it might genuinely be Solar Watch, but for whatever reason, the artwork for Solar Watch doesn't look good.
Yeah, right. It was
weird off-white silver.
Yeah, it was mint.
But the color scheme, I'm just like, yeah, I've got to do that. So I'll do that for Heresy because it was so cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And then we went off. So we won that round convincingly, but not. I think we ended up with 93 points. So we won, but we weren't as big a swing as we wanted. And then we went off and we paired into ACT. So ACT, just wanted to big shout out to their coach, Jack Lavercombe, who, if you've seen our battle report with Barnyard Wargaming, that's Evil Jack from Barnyard Wargaming. He's coach for ACT, so we had a blast sort of chatting and going over stuff between us as well. It's probably the most enjoyable round for me with regards to my opposing number, the other coach, because we knew each other beforehand. We're like, all right, look, we both know how this plays out for us, so we sort of freely shared information and talked about the whole thing. And at the end of the day, I think it helped us both, help our teams to a higher degree. So that was an interesting little change in the dynamic there. So in round 5 against ACT, who did you play into?
So again, I played another captain. I played Sam.
Yep.
Their Eldar Hail of Doom list. Which was
the big scary.
Which was just like, fuck off. I hated that so much.
Charlie, take notes.
Yeah, definitely, bro. If you want help, yeah, man. If you want help writing an Eldar list, I'll 100% help you write an Eldar list because I know that stupid shit now back to front. So again, overall, considering what it was and what was projected for me, again, this was a big fire blanket for the whole team.
Yep. Okay, this was a 20 into almost any other list in the team.
Yeah, and
as in a 0 for us.
Yeah, and so I got an 8 into that, and
which is
12-8.
Incredible.
Yeah, so
yeah.
I traded really well with using zoanthropes in a really malicious way in this game, like just forcing him to focus on them by turn 1, having them delete a bike unit.
Yeah.
They were just like, they moved and it was just like, mortals dead. And then I just pulled them off the board in Circle of Prey. I was like, bye.
Yep.
Hey, you can't touch them.
Yep.
And then pop them back down. And then I had...
Which is an uninteractive, it's a terrible rule. It's so uninteractive. But, obviously, it's there, so go for it.
Well, I mean, heaps of other people have it. And it's not uninteractive because you can't keep doing it. You don't get it.
Right, okay, fair enough, sorry.
Right, so, you can't just come down, do something, leave. Come down, do something, leave. So,
it's... Well, so, I think it's been fixed by now as well.
It's totally fucked now.
But essentially, it meant you could do actions, you could hold objectives, you could score points, and then just leave and be like, all right, cool. All that risk I just did, is gone.
Yeah,
they're perfectly safe now.
Just quickly with the nerf, I don't understand the nerf because now you're just never ever using it. It's like it literally hasn't. It might not even. They might as well have just said delete this stratagem because you'll never. I can't see a situation where you'd ever actually use this because now it's at the end of your movement phase. So you can't even move and shoot and do something and then leave or anything. What's the point? It can't score you engage, can't do you anything. So I was like, why would you? I mean, would you do
that said, I will say that not having this strat is better than having it in the form it was. Because in general, it's one of those stratagems, those abilities where I'm like, I think there's, and this is true of all cases of it, the Taraxii, all the other stuff that have it as well. I think it's too uninteractive. But that's a whole other discussion about
Yeah, the tracksuit one definitely was when it first came out for sure, because you literally could not interact with
that's
it.
been exactly, and that's been fixed more or less into a toned down version of what the stratagem used to be.
The problem is that it's got too many applications where it's retarded. So like the reason why it was fixed was for the Hive Tyrant situation, which is fully understandable.
So with zones, it's bad, it's nasty, but it's not as bad as the Hive Tyrant where you go, here's delete half your army and then leave.
Yeah, so that's kind of a few of the changes with the NID stuff is kind of to combat the big bads, but the problem is, unlike other armies, they have compounding effects on other stuff that isn't as broken, which now just got really a hell of a lot worse. But whatever.
This isn't the NIDS Nerf podcast yet.
Okay.
So let's keep on track. Let's crack on through round 5.
Yeah. So anyway,
you use the zones like this, which is nasty as hell, but very,
and then
very well
also
done.
they just survived. Every single game of the weekend, and this is for any of the NIDS player out there. Do not be afraid to throw your zone tropes in the middle of stuff. They are if you're playing Leviathan. Okay, I'm just caveat with if you're playing Leviathan. They are so hard to kill. And
T5, transhuman, 4 up involved.
It's the 4 wounds.
5 wounds?
It's the 4 wounds too, which really fucks it.
There's so few weapons that are efficient into 4 wounds.
Yeah, it's annoying. And it's just...
especially with transhuman. Anything with 4 wounds is usually like strength 8, strength 9, and you're just putting them. You're reducing their wound dice. It's so good.
Yeah, and obviously Weight of Fire is going to do it into anything, right? So if you're doing like 160 shots into something, yes, it is going to die. But
But that was going to happen regardless of what it was.
Exactly. So you just don't position it in a way. But you can do it where you kind of bait out targets. Where I literally he had full units of a 6-man unit of bikes with Halo of Doom with guide, and took 2 wounds off one zone throat. And it's just like just a frustration. He was just like, "Oh my god, why is this thing alive?" And I would have screamed. I would have thrown dice across the table if that was me. So they were amazing. They were super instrumental. And again, with this, this was really this couldn't have been a worse matchup for me being slow, him being fast, it being 6 objective missions. So secondary choices were really tough, and I kind of probably poo-pooed on one by taking Psychic Interrogation, because his ability to just consistently stay out of range for that was just fine.
Yeah.
But the consensus on our choice, or like my choice with the advice of in like previously talking about it, like it would keeps the player honest in terms of they have to do that. So they have to make sure that they're out of that range.
Yeah.
So it just keeps them at bay a little bit more. And that's what I want, because in this game, it was kind of like, all right, move into certain areas and just hold, outlast the game, and see how long we can do. So if you've got a situation where you're pushing up with the character and beating back certain things, you might be able to stay out of, Doom is harder for him to put on optimal targets, or, whatever the reason. It just makes it a little bit tougher for your opponent to do that, which was cool. It was kind of a little bit of a psyops kind of mind game part in it by taking that secondary, even though I didn't even score it once. Oh no, I did score it once. So I got 3 points on that.
Yeah. But I mean, the points you scored because your opponent was forced to move their psychers a certain way is entirely valuable.
Yeah, and it was on top of that, it was more in terms of he wasn't able to move into a position and just get a line of sight, pick up a warrior unit. Move an area, pick up a warrior unit, because he just couldn't get the movement, or he wasn't willing to risk it. So he was very cautious with the trade, because he knew that if he moved after losing that first unit, he goes, if I move into in an area where I've got line of sight and I cannot fire and fade back, or I can't strands of fade, or whatever the hell those rules are, he's like, that unit's dead. He just it's a worse trade for him if he loses a bike unit than me loses a warrior unit. And it was probably one of the most, I think, high level play games I had, funnily enough, with all the like real tricksy movement shenanigans and like plays on like using strats and stuff in different ways. Sorry, that and the last 2 games, that and Tassie, Adam Davies.
I think the custodian list was a harder one for you to go into.
And terrain on this one was a real hindrance on this, because I
think he got to pick terrain.
No, I did, but
you did? Okay.
I didn't know the mission. I was like, whatever.
Oh, okay,
I just picked the heavy terrain, because Jez and that. The
I mean, to be fair,
I just take heavy terrain to take it off the other players.
Yeah. And I mean, look, WTC terrain in general is very heavy. I think all of their boards would be considered heavy by our standards.
Yeah. Funnily enough, it wasn't heavy enough.
Yeah. Yep. There we
go. Just in the way the terrain layout was, and because it's that weird angle deployment.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was tough, and I think deployment played a little bit of an error. But anyway, that's the point. Yeah, it was still a crazy good result. I was really pushing for the 10-10, and I was kind of a bit bummed I didn't get the 10-10 because that was my goal in that game. But still, like,
the eight you pulled out of that was more than pretty much any other list was confident they'd do.
Exactly. So
and as it was said multiple times across the weekend, but you being able to send you into a horrendous list like that Eldar and go, oh, we actually scored 8 points out of that is incredible.
Yeah.
So it was well played, well done. And it was very valuable to the team as a whole.
Yeah, so the boys were pretty cheers, man. So the boys were pretty pumped with the 8. Like I remember Jez was like, "Fuck, serious? You got 8, bro?" He's like, "That's awesome." I was like,
"Yeah,
okay.
yeah."
So yeah, man, that's kind of the roundup of my 5 games, and it was so at the end I had a loss, a draw, and 3 wins.
Yeah, which was amazing.
Pretty awesome for like my first ATC experience, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And so yeah, I'll push that point a little bit more on the way that a team event works. Is the points you score it's more important that you're accurate with predictions and you can pull out the points you say you will than you're actually winning games.
Yeah.
Because of the way pairings work. And I would say that you did an incredibly good job with your scores that you're pulling out on these games. So being the coach and being able to walk around and watch 8 games around and keep an eye on the whole thing meant that I generally had a pretty good sense for the way games were going. And by like your second and third game, I'm like, okay, I can rely on you scoring middle scores.
Yeah.
And that reliability was really important.
Yeah, cool. No, that's good.
To a bunch of the rounds.
That's sick.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, and that pretty much wrapped up day 2. So we ended up coming in on BCP 4th. So behind Queensland in first place, WA in second place, and New South Wales in third. Unfortunately, they won by a little bit too much, and SA didn't lose by enough to actually let us bump up above New South Wales. But so be it. That's the way it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Well played. So congratulations to those 3 teams. Well played to all of you guys. So good on them. Victorian team coming in 4th, especially with 5 brand new players to the scene, was fantastic, and it's been echoed several times that the old guard, so to speak, were very happy with the result, especially with how all the new players did. And as far as I'm concerned, I spent 2 days watching 40 games of incredible 40k.
When you say it like that, it's a lot of games for 40k.
It's 40 games. Like, I mean, okay, look, yes, I was a coach and I wasn't playing, so I get to walk around and watch games. And on the one hand, like, I get to drink beers and hang out. I mean, it wasn't what I was doing. I was running around and relaying information, doing a bunch of other stuff. But on the other hand, like, I was mentally wiped out after that.
No, and
it's a lot of games to keep track of.
It can't be said enough how valuable the role of a coach is too in that. And the word coach isn't necessarily like you're guiding everyone what to do. You're assisting.
Coach is more of a traditional word. It was support staff is a better term.
You're assisting the players in knowing where we're currently sitting in the state of the game, the state of the round. And it was really helpful to be able to have you and kind of like what you were saying about me being able to, you knew that I was going to get average scores. I knew that if I said to you, where are we at or what's going on, that like your answer was like spot on, and that's exactly what was happening, or that's exactly what we were sitting. So the information transfer was really clear, and that was really good for me getting like reassurance on those little things. And you got so much praise from all the boys going, and held you really high on how you did as a coach in terms of how influential you were, not only at the Maitland event, but then also at this one as well, in terms of your dedication to what you were doing, man. So, yeah, well done to you, bro.
Cheers.
Well,
Cheers.
It is a team's event. It's everyone. It's not individuals. It's everyone, doing their role and doing it together. And, we Risky Rollers went and represented, and we did it fucking awesome, really.
Yeah. Well, thank you, man. And absolutely, it was so much fun to go. Learned so much coming out of it. If you've never been to a teams event, go to one. It's pretty much everyone who goes to one then goes, this is the best way to play 40k, because it's such a different experience, and I think it's a much more enjoyable one. To go and be part of the team and to do all that with your mates.
I think it's definitely a less stressful 40k experience. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It is and it isn't. I don't know. I think that maybe it's just the fact that you're playing with people.
Yeah.
But it is. I don't know, personally, I don't know if it's the best way to play 40k. I definitely see why people see it that way. It's definitely enjoyable. It's definitely hugely enjoyable and is a lot less, like I said, less stressful than singles, and has its appeal. And I do like it. I do think that we've spoken about this prior, but I think
yep.
five player. I'd love to play a 5-player teams event and see what that is, because in my mind that just sits better than 8 members. But again, I haven't played that, so I don't know. But in my head, I'm like, I'd really like to do a 5-player teams event, as in playing one.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's VTC are running a second one in summer that's a 5-player teams event, so we can probably look into that.
Yeah, we'll definitely
fielding a Risky Rollers team.
Definitely be doing that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm can't wait for VTC as well to sort of take what I've learned about pairings and so on, and see how I can apply that. So that, as I mentioned, we'll probably do a whole podcast on that coming up to it.
Yeah,
but
sounds cool.
I got to spend so much time watching and thinking about it, and looking at scores and things, and paying attention to the pairings, which is it's an incredible little process that goes on as well. So yeah, I'll do a whole podcast on that at some point, because that was fascinating.
Yeah, for sure.
And the other thing that'll be interesting to note, I guess, if you're interested in, I guess the level of 40k that gets played, there's a whole bunch of subtle shifts and differences in the way things happen. So keep an eye out on our games on the channel in the next couple of months, and seeing how they change and how we can sort of up our game a little bit. If you watch the one coming out next week, the Tau and Deathwatch one, that was we filmed after I went to Maitland and watched those games, but before I went to this one. And there's definitely a change in the way that was played as well. So I'm keen to see how that goes, and how we can both grow as players after this as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that wraps up the Australia New Zealand Team Championships for 2022. And then of course we went out for dinner, and then we had an 8.5-minute call with a taxi, trying to bargain with them to come and pick us up, because we're out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
That we ended up paying an extra $20 for the trip, and then had to promise to give them the same fares tomorrow for our trips to the airport.
Which was awesome, because the guy was an actual fucking legend.
Well, he actually showed up and took us to the airport like a taxi.
Yeah, and
incredible.
Yeah, no. Big shout out to old mate, whatever his name was. Never got his name, but yeah, big shout outs to him.
And then we came back home and slept off a massive weekend.
Yeah, it was hectic. I'm still recovering.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm 40k'd out. To be honest, I've been playing Elden Ring all week, so yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think we'll wrap up there. It was a fantastic weekend. Can't wait for the next one. And yeah. So thank you guys for listening. Make sure to check out our Patreon if you want to catch the exclusive Tau and Black Templar Battle Report before seeing the Tau and Deathwatch one with all the new updates next week. As well as jump into a Discord to chat with us and hang out and talk all sorts of different things. see Charlie building his horrific Hail of Doom Eldar list that Locky is terrified of. Chat and hang out and all that kind of stuff. Big old thanks to Tim at Dice Arcade. If you want to buy some miniatures or anything to do with the hobby, wargaming, cards, anything at all, hit him up at Dice Arcade. We've got a discount code down below and all of that good stuff. Check out Miniature Scenery, Tim Waggers, absolute legend there as well. If you want high quality MDF terrain, MDF, even model kits and things like that, you can check out miniaturescenery.com for anything you need there. A lot of our battle reports feature his terrain that looks incredible and is an absolute top-notch bloke as well.
100%.
So check all those out. Make sure to like, subscribe, leave a review, comment, all that kind of stuff. And make sure to catch us next time on the Whiskey Rolls podcast. Thank you all for listening. Bye.
Bye.